August 9th, 1944, a shadow near Files, Normandy. General Heinrich Eberbach, commander of Panzer Group West, looked at the map spread across the oak table. Outside, the summer air rumbled with the distant thunder of artillery. But inside, the room was quiet. Eberbach was a man of cold logic, a veteran tank commander who trusted numbers more than courage, and the numbers on his map told him a comforting lie. Under his command were the remnants of the most feared armored force in history, the 1st SS Panzer Division, the 12th SS, the Panzerlehr. He counted his strength, roughly 900 operational tanks, and assault guns scattered across the sector. Among them were the Tigers, 60-ton monsters that could kill an American Sherman from 2 kilometers away. Eberbach knew the kill ratios. It took 5 Shermans to destroy 1 Tiger. Mathematically, if he positioned his heavy armor in the hedgerows, he could bleed the Americans dry. He believed he was fighting a tactical battle. He believed that if his crews shot straight, if his Tigers held the crossroads, he could stabilize the front. He was wrong. What Eberbach didn't know, what he couldn't see from his headquarters, was that the battle for Normandy had already been decided weeks ago, not by soldiers but by accountants in Detroit and logistic planners in Cherbourg. While Eberbach was counting his 900 tanks like precious jewels, expecting them to last for months, the Americans were treating their own tanks like disposable ammunition. At that exact moment, just 50 miles to the west, a convoy of trucks was leaving the beachhead. It wasn't carrying ammo. It was carrying engine blocks, hundreds of them. Eberbach was fighting a war of nights. His enemy was fighting a war of factories. And the general was about to discover that courage has no value when the enemy has an infinite supply of steel. To understand the nightmare facing General Eberbach, we must look at what logistics meant for a German panzer division in 1904. It was a system held together by improvisation and theft. By August, the once mighty Wehrmacht was scavenging for survival. Consider the fuel. A panzer division required roughly 350 km of fuel to move 100 kilometers. This was known as a vibrates or consumption unit. In Russia, they moved vast distances. Here in Normandy, they couldn't move at all. The Allied Air Force had bombed the French rail network into oblivion. Bridges over the Seine were cut. Fuel trains were strafed before they could reach the depots. Eberbach received reports daily. 12th SS Panzer Immobile, 2nd Panzer, fuel for 15 kilometers. His tactical genius was irrelevant because his tanks were becoming static pillboxes. When a Tiger tank broke down, and they broke down often, their complex transmissions straining under the 60-ton weight, it needed a specialized recovery vehicle, the Berger Panther, to tow it. But the recovery vehicles had no fuel, so a breakdown became a total loss. The German mechanics were brilliant. They cannibalized wrecked tanks, stripping gears and optics to keep the survivors running. They worked at night under camouflage nets, using flashlights with blue filters to avoid attracting the relentless Typhoon fighter bombers. But brilliance cannot manufacture gasoline. Eberbach watched his strength evaporate, not from enemy fire, but from friction. Every kilometer driven was a kilometer closer to immobility. He was fighting a defensive war with a wasting asset. Assuming the enemy faced similar constraints, he assumed the Americans also had to conserve fuel, count their shells, and worry about spare parts. He assumed the laws of physics applied equally to both sides. He was about to be corrected. While Eberbach rationed every liter of synthetic petrol, an industrial miracle was taking place on the beaches of Omaha and Utah. It was a sight that would have broken Eberbach's heart. The Americans didn't just bring an army. They brought a city. By August, the artificial harbors and the captured port of Cherbourg were processing tonnage on a scale that defied military history. We are talking about 15,000 tons of supplies, not per month, per day. Let's look at the tank replacement system. In the German army, if a tank was destroyed, you filed a request to Berlin, waited weeks for rail transport, hoped the train wasn't bombed, and maybe eventually you received a replacement. In the US First Army, it worked like a supermarket. The Americans had established ordnance parks just behind the lines. These were vast fields filled with row after row of brand-new M4 Shermans. 4,800 tanks were pumped into the theater, with thousands more waiting in England. When an American tank unit lost a vehicle in the morning, the crew, if they survived, would often be back in a fresh tank, fully fueled and loaded with ammo by the same evening. There is a recorded interrogation of a captured German officer from the Panzer Division. He asked his captors, "How many tanks do you have?" The American interrogator shrugged and said, "As many as we need." The German didn't believe him. He couldn't. To the German mind, a tank was a rare hand-crafted instrument of war. To the Americans, a Sherman was just a car with a gun, a consumer product, manufactured by the same assembly lines that built Fords and Chevrolets. This was the Detroit glitch. The Germans killed tanks one by one. The Americans spawned them in batches of 50. But having tanks is useless if you can't feed them. And here is where the disparity becomes almost comical. While Ebrauch's Tigers were abandoned because they ran out of gas, the Americans created the Red Ball Express. Starting in late August, to support the breakout, the U.S. Army created a one-way loop highway system restricted to supply trucks. It was a conveyor belt of rubber and steel, nearly 6,000 trucks, mostly driven by African American soldiers, driving non-stop 24 hours a day. The Red Bull Express delivered 12,500 tons of supplies daily. They burned huge amounts of fuel just to deliver fuel, a level of waste that would have horrified a German logistician. But the Americans didn't care about efficiency. They cared about velocity. They had so much fuel they could afford to waste it. Imagine General Eberbach's perspective. He orders a counterattack near Mortain. His panzer move out, engaging the U.S. 21st Infantry Division. They score hits. They destroy Shermans. They push forward. But then the needles on their fuel gauges drop to zero. The attack stalls. The crews have to bail out and run. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hedge, the American units are flush. They are firing artillery shells at single soldiers just because they can. They are running tank engines idle just to power their radios. The sound of the American lines was a constant deep roar of internal combustion. The sound of the German lines was becoming a silence punctuated only by the screams of the wounded. The mathematical disparity began to rot the morale of the German soldier. And here the numbers tell a story of total psychological collapse. Consider the ambush at Lisieux. A single Panther tank commander reported engaging a column of Shermans. In 14 minutes he destroyed 3 American tanks, a brilliant tactical success. But then a 4th Sherman appeared and a 5th. By the end of the day, that Panther crew had destroyed 8 enemy tanks, an incredible 8:1 kill ratio. But by the next morning, American reinforcements had arrived. For every tank the German had killed, 10 new ones had taken its place. The replacement ratio was 1:10 against him. He was winning every fight, yet losing the war. This infinite spawn glitch broke the human spirit. Eberbach saw this in the medical reports. His elite crews were operating on 4 hours of sleep per day. They were fueled by Pervitin pills just to keep their eyes open. In contrast, the Americans had enough manpower to rotate units every 26 hours. A German crew would fight for 11 consecutive days without relief. An American crew would fight for 3 days, then rotate to a rear area where they received hot food, clean water, and fresh uniforms. The disparity wasn't just military, it was civilizational. A German prisoner captured in August was found carrying half a loaf of stale bread and 7 rounds of ammunition. His captives offered him a chocolate bar from a supply box that contained Dienhausen bars. The prisoner broke down and wept. He realized that while his emperor demanded he die for the fatherland, enemy had the industrial capacity to ship chocolate across an ocean. The end for General Eberbach came on August 21. He was captured while conducting a reconnaissance patrol, but his army had died weeks before. In the aftermath of the battle, Allied teams surveyed the wreckage in the file's pocket. They found hundreds of German armored vehicles. But when they analyzed the causes of loss, they found something startling. A huge percentage had not been penetrated by Allied shells. They had been abandoned. Consider the specific inventory of Panzer Group West. From August 1C to September 1C, the 1st SS Panzer Division entered the month with 67 operational tanks. By September 1C, it had 0, not because they were destroyed in combat, though many were, but because the division was systematically dismantled tank by tank, not by American gunfire, but by the simple mathematical reality of fuel supply. The 12th SS Panzer Division had started August with 82 tanks. By August 25th, when they were caught in the first phase of the fillets closing, they had 24 operational machines. The remainder were not burning wrecks. They were stationary positions dug in as anti-tank guns because they couldn't move. By August 21st, when the pocket fully closed, they had 7 tanks remaining. 7. All of them immobile, running on fumes, their fuel gauges permanently at empty. The Panzerlehr Division, once the pride of the Wehrmacht, represented perhaps the clearest example of logistical defeat. They entered Normandy in early June with 90 tanks and assault guns. By the end of June, after just 3 weeks of combat, they were down to 70 operational machines. By mid-July, 95. By August 15th, when they were first committed to the defense of the File sector, they possessed exactly all done tanks that could still move under their own power. The psychological impact on the crews cannot be overstated. Imagine being a tank commander of the Panzerlehr. You have survived North Africa, you have survived Russia, you have survived the beach landings. Your crew is intact. Your Tiger tank has never been penetrated by enemy fire. The armor is pristine. The 88mm gun is still deadly. But you are ordered to walk away from the vehicle because there is no fuel to move it 15 kilometers to the next defensive position. Across the entire File's pocket, this scene repeated 7 times. 7 German tanks and assault guns were abandoned, not destroyed. The American recovery crews that followed the breakout found them still smelling of diesel and hot metal. Engines cold, ammunition loaded, crews vanished into the darkness on foot, searching for a way out that no longer existed. The accounting that followed was meticulous. The U.S. Army established a destroyed equipment tally that tracked not just German vehicles killed in action, but the causes of loss. Of the 807 German armored vehicles catalogued in the fillet's pocket wreckage, the breakdown was destroyed by direct fire. 334 vehicles, approximately 28% destroyed by aerial attack. 129 vehicles, approximately 23% destroyed by sappers and demolition charges. 101 vehicles, approximately 13%, abandoned without damage. 312 vehicles, approximately 70%. 12 tanks and assault guns simply left behind because they could not operate. No shells had penetrated their armor. No mines had torn their tracks. They were defeated by the absence of a liquid substance that exists in unlimited quantities across the American supply network. Meanwhile, the U.S. First Army took inventory. They had lost hundreds of Shermans in the hedge. It was a massacre of machinery. The 2nd Armored Division, which bore the brunt of the fighting in the Norman Bocage, reported losing 648 tanks in the month of August, nearly a complete replacement of their initial strength. But by September 1st, the operational strength of the U.S. armored divisions was nearly 100%, not because the losses had been reversed, but because they had been replaced. In the 7 days of the fillet's breakout alone, the U.S. First Army received 601 replacement tanks. 601, all of them shipped from England. All of them arriving with ammunition, fuel, and crews assigned. The supply lines that fed this replacement system extended back to the harbors of Normandy, where Liberty ships were arriving with precision-timed regularity. Every ship carried not just tanks, but the entire ecosystem required to sustain them. Engines, transmission parts, ammunition, food, medicine, uniforms, letters from home. A German logistics officer captured near the town of Weir on August 28th was interrogated about German supply plans. He was asked, "How long could your army sustain offensive operations with current supply?" He paused for a long moment, then answered, "We cannot sustain anything. We are starving. We are burning horses for fuel because we have no gasoline. Officers are taking gasoline from vehicles that are already broken down, transferring it to vehicles they hope will run long enough to escape. This is not logistics. This is cannibalism." The interpreter made a note. The interrogator asked the German officer, "Do you know how many tons of supplies the Americans are receiving per day?" The German officer shook his head. 15,000 tons. The German officer closed his eyes. He didn't speak again for the rest of the interrogation. The 900 tanks Erbach counted at the start of August. Most of them were left rusting in French fields, defeated by the supply chain. Not a single one of them killed by a better tank. Not a single one of them defeated by superior tactics. They were defeated by mathematics, by the simple reality that Germany could not produce 15,000 tons of supplies per day, and the United States could and would every day for as long as the war lasted. By September 15th, when the final isolated German positions in Normandy surrendered, the file's pocket had yielded to Allied forces the following inventory: 300 German tanks destroyed or captured, 602 German artillery pieces, mined, 147 German trucks, and transport vehicles, 420 German anti-tank guns, 77,000 German prisoners of war. The material accounting told the story more clearly than any battle report. Of those 217 tanks captured intact, 79 of them showed no signs of enemy fire, no penetrations, no burns from explosion, no damage from air attack. They were simply left behind, abandoned, empty of fuel, useless. The flow from Detroit never stopped. On the day that Eberbach was captured, 3 more Liberty ships were unloading in Cherbourg. They carried 47 replacement tanks, 100 tons of ammunition, 890,000 gallons of fuel, and 4,000 tons of food. For the American army, the loss of the file's pocket in terms of German destruction was a victory. For Eberbach, it was the final confirmation of a truth he could no longer deny. The war was not being fought between armies. It was being fought between economic systems, and his economic system had already lost. The Wehrmacht was destroyed not because it lacked courage. It was destroyed because it tried to fight an industrial war with a craftsman's mindset. Consider the final accounting. In August 1944 alone, German industry struggled to produce 280 tanks of all types. In that same month, the United States produced 2,600 tanks. The ratio was 1,9. This was not a tactical disadvantage. It was an extinction-level event. The 900 tanks Eberbach commanded at the start of August. By September 1 Steed, that number had become 0, not in pitched battles, but in the ledger. In the end, the most dangerous weapon the Americans brought to Normandy wasn't the atomic bomb or the P-51 Mustang or even the M4 Sherman. It was the spreadsheet. It was the mathematics of production that made every German victory tactically meaningless. Thanks for watching Tales of Valor. If you found this story powerful, the moment when a general realized that courage and tactical skill mean nothing against the mathematics of industrial capacity, please like and subscribe for more forgotten World War II stories. We explore history through the lens of those who lived it. German commanders discovering why superior tactics could not defeat superior logistics. Japanese officers realizing that determination meant nothing against industrial supremacy. American soldiers understanding that wars are won in factories, not on battlefields. Tell us in the comments what other forgotten military operations and stories would you like us to explore next. Where are you watching from today? What moments in military history do you find most powerful? Your engagement and support help us continue bringing these untold narratives to everyone who wants to understand how modern warfare truly works. We thank you for watching. We thank you for your support. Keep telling these stories.